your adulting coach. I help autistic young adults and their families systemize adulting together. Thank you for watching this video. Today's struggle comes from our mom who is transitioning her autistic young adult who's 23 to independent living. Her family's decided that that's the right move. She explains that they have a 23-year-old son on the spectrum, and they're transitioning him from a home to an independent ISL, an independent living situation. I'm not sure what that stands for. She shares that she feels so guilty. Can anyone relate to this? And I think all of us can. It's hard to move someone out of your home that we believe still needs us. And perhaps that might be the reason for the guilt. But let's dive into this and see what we can figure out. First, we're going to use Barb Avila's process from her book, Seeing Autism, where we try to understand what's going on, what's different about having a child with an autistic brain, then move to connect with ourselves and with them, and then finally figure out what practices might help in this situation. So I don't know, but I think that maybe our mom has some thoughts like this. I don't want him to leave home, but she did share that his behaviors are aggressive and he is strong. So it's probably important to consider that thought. Others' thoughts when they replied to her concerns were, anyone who judges you has not walked in your shoes. These behaviors can be difficult to handle. And we understand that aggressive behavior, especially when it's physical, is very scary and difficult to process because it's someone you love, and there they are doing something that is definitely not going to help them or the situation. So let's connect with ourselves first and figure out, what else could how did we get from guilt to something that's a little bit more peaceful? The tool that I recommend is the STEER map. It's where we take whatever's happening in our lives and separate it into these 5 categories. What's the situation? And the situation is always outside of our control. That's the part where we have to accept what's happening and then figure out what we can do, and then figure out where the differences are. And so I advocate that in the situation, we really stick just to the facts, because the facts aren't scary. They don't hurt anybody. They just are the facts. The thoughts are the meaning that we're making out of the situation. And it's so helpful to separate the two. What is the fact versus what is the story that I'm creating around the facts? Then those thoughts will inspire emotions in us. Those emotions can have a huge range from being very comfortable to being very uncomfortable. And identifying where we are on that emotional range. Some people use a circle, some people use a line, some people use quadrants, but where are we in that emotional? What does that thought inspire in us emotionally? And then when we have that emotion, how do we act? If someone were taking a movie of us, how do we act? And then what do those actions create? What are the results of those actions that are inspired by the emotion that is created by the thought about the situation? So her situation is our son. And so I recommend to her that she find that sentence that is creating the guilt, and then ask herself, how do you show up when you're guilty? And I imagine when I'm feeling guilty, I feel powerless, more powerless than powerful, that's for sure. Less confident in the actions that I'm taking because I'm just not sure that I should be doing what I'm doing, and kind of mixed. I mean, it's just it's just kind of it's like the clothes on a spin cycle. There's a lot of thoughts going on in there, and it's hard to identify each one. So, it just, and I act some ways some day and I act other ways other days because I have all these sentences. I haven't intentionally chosen the one that I think is going to work best for me and seen how that one works. So, what's created is kind of a mishmash of results. Some things are okay, some things aren't okay, but it's all overshadowed by the guilt that we're feeling. And that makes sense. We've all been there. We've all done this. And so I hear her guilt, and I think it's about having her young adult move away from her because she and her family, because they just love him all the way down to his toes. And they don't want him to think that they don't love him. And they don't want to think that him to think that they don't accept him 100%. So I understand that, there's a lot going on here, and it's pretty complex, and it just might take a while to figure out, and probably will anyway, because as was mentioned in the post, getting our children into a situation where we feel comfortable, where the staff is well trained and they're safe, is not an easy thing to do. So my suggestion during this period of transition time is that maybe it might be helpful if she used the sentence, okay, our son, I wonder what he wants. That might be able to help her move from guilt to curiosity. But let me just start here with another way of doing this. All right, yeah, let's go back up here. Let's start with, how do we move from that sentence? So I'm going to start again with, okay, we have our son, our 23-year-old son, and the thought might be, I don't want him to go. And then I want to tag that sentence with, and that's okay. The reason why I want to start there is because you can put whatever sentence in there that's working in this case. But if we can just get to the end, that's okay. And then we go look for, that's when we're saying, okay, I can accept that I don't want him to leave, but I can also accept, everything that's going on is, maybe he would be better off in another place. Maybe he does need a different environment in which to grow and learn some skills that we haven't been effective yet teaching him. I mean, when he is being aggressive, that's an unsolved problem, which also means that he has a lagging skill in, emotion management, thought, being aware of his thinking, having a strong mind that can handle things. I mean, maybe he just needs to be in another place where he can learn. But we can also be his teacher and love him, while he's there as well. It's not like he's leaving our world, he's just leaving our home. So I just wonder if we can get to that. I don't want him to leave, and that's okay. And we can get to acceptance. And maybe another thought that might be going on is, maybe if we add the word maybe at the beginning of our sentences, maybe he'll be better off away from us. No, I don't know. So that maybe helps me feel an emotion of curiosity. Maybe it's possible. I just hope that we can kind of wiggle our thinking a little bit using the maybe word in front of our thought, or the and that's okay in front at the end of our thought. That gives us a little bit of room to get to an emotion that serves us better than the guilty emotion. Something that's a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more willing to expand out some of the possibilities that could be available in this situation. One of my favorite ones that I use often is when I have my young adults, I wonder what he wants. And this is helpful when something has happened and it's, maybe something aggressive. Maybe it's, if we ask them again, not like in the middle of the showdown or the meltdown. Um, Maybe if we ask them later, what were you trying to do? What were you trying to accomplish? Is there any way that we could try and figure out what was his thinking and emotional motivation for the act behind the actions that he took? It would be so helpful to know that. And so if we can get to that spot of curiosity, our actions will enable us to find out what's going on with him. And then the result could be, now we know what he wants, which is so helpful, because then we can brainstorm a bunch of ways for him to get it that are more productive, maybe, and more useful than the ways that he was thinking about it in that particular situation. So here's where we move on to the practice. And especially when our young adults are moving out, I think it's really helpful for us to know what they want in their whole life. I mean, the whole thing. Now, how do we figure that out? So I advocate that we split our life into three parts: energy, work, and love. And those compose, when you think about it, it's all about getting our energy, what food we eat, how we manage our mind, how we move our body, how the money we have to fuel our lives. And then what do we do? How do we make a contribution? What's our work? What's the contribution that we're making? And where's our home? And what does it look like? And what kinds of things do we have? What electronics do we have? Do we have a car? Do we have Those are the things that fall into that work category. And then love is, what does he love to learn about? I'm sure he plays games and watches YouTube videos, or maybe even reads some books. What is it that he loves to learn about? Who are the people that he loves to love? And I'm sure that's you included. And what is he aspiring for in terms of people that are going to be surrounding him? And then finally, what's most important to him at his core? What are his core values? And I just bet that there's some stuff in there that's really important to him. Like maybe it's really important to him to be honest. Maybe it's really important to him to have people around him that are loyal to him. So loyalty might be a value that's important to him. I just think if we can sort of flush all that out, it would be so helpful. So here's what I suggest we do, is that we interview him. We actually sit down and interview him. Now, it may need to be a series of interviews depending on, what he's willing to do and what he's capable of doing. But if we can just talk to him about, what do you like to eat? What is really important to you in terms of how you move? Do you like to ride a bike? Do you like to exercise on the elliptical? Do you like to take walks in nature? What is it that brings energy into your life? What are some of the thoughts? Like, how can we help you, um, you know, discover what we just want to discover? What are the thoughts that are going on inside of him with a curious emotion? So, to do all of that, we really have to reflectively listen. And here is where we take in what they're saying, sort it out in our own mind, and sum it up so that we can say it back to them succinctly in our own words. We're not parroting what they say, because that can feel somewhat insincere or even mocking. What we want to do is we want to say back succinctly in our own words, the reflection. And I see I forgot to put that slide in here, so I'm going to add that really fast. Is that slide about the reflective listening process, so that it's right in here. There we go. Nope, that's not it. Yep, there it is. It's my wallpaper. So it sounds like, you really enjoy having your special burrito every day while you're living, that just is really important to you, because we know what kind of foods they want to eat. And that's always a great place to start, because food is such a, is such a loving topic. I mean, we create our food and give it to our family and with all kinds of love attached to it. So it's always great to start with food. And what are his movement like? I've noticed, I've noticed that you like to ride a bike. How can we make sure that that's always a part of your life? I mean, can you tell me about that? Why is that important to you? So then, by doing that reflective listening with them and just really tuning into what's important to them, I think we can actually scribe for them what's important to them in their life. And I did this with my children. Oh gosh, it's been maybe 4 or 5 years ago. This is how this whole process started. Was I started interviewing each of my autistic young adults and asking them what they wanted in their life. And it was such a wonderful conversation. And I highly, highly recommend it that you go through that energy, work, and love, that triad, and see what you can learn about your autistic young adult. Because I mean, there just isn't anything as wonderful as having somebody listen to us carefully and reflect back to us what our heart's desires are. And what a wonderful way to connect with your 23-year-old son. And see, what you'll discover in that process is that there's so many places where you can still be connected to him, and you can still help him in all the ways that you want to. I mean, like in his room, he's going to want to have the special things that make him feel safe. You can a special blanket, a special pillow. How is all that going to work? I mean, you can really make it possible for him to have your love in a separate situation, as long as you know what it is that he really wants. So I just encourage you to try this process. And then, of course, you want to go through that collaborative, proactive problem solving process that Ross Green outlines at his website, livesinthebalance.org. It's, your new home. Let's imagine what your new home is. What would you like in it? Here are some of the concerns that we have and what we would like for you to have. And let's talk about what's the very next step that we can take together to help you have that home away from home, that home away from our home that will become your primary home over time. What can we do to support you? Because we love you and we just love doing this with you. And we love helping you create a life that you love, that works for all of us. So that's my suggestion. I hope some of the ideas in here make sense to you. And, please stop by at the address below. Lynn C. Davison, let me type it right in here, www.lynncdavison.com/blog, where you'll find what's it called? This transcript, thank you. The transcript of this conversation and the links to the various resources that I mentioned. And, I'd love to hear any feedback that you have. So please comment below if this video has been helpful to you. Bye for now.